Securing the State House with not one, not two, but 3 separate security forces, and your tax dollars are paying for it. When we saw millions spent for 3 departments doing the same thing, we got Target 11 on the case.
Investigator Rick Earl traveled to Harrisburg to answer the question, is this why we're broke? Rick?
Yeah, David, Peggy, both the House and Senate have their own security forces. And then there's the Capitol Police, 3 separate forces under one roof. Some lawmakers say it actually saves money. Critics say it's a waste of your tax dollars. Check. State Capitol Police patrol the Capitol in Harrisburg and guard the entrances. But Capitol Police aren't the only ones watching this building. Both the House and Senate also have their own security forces. But unlike Capitol Police, they don't have arrest powers and don't carry weapons.
It's really a symptom of what's wrong in Harrisburg, overkill.
Capitol Police have 92 officers and also patrol the state office buildings in Harrisburg, Philadelphia, and Scranton. The cost, more than $10 million a year. The House has 25 security guards at a cost of $1.5 million. There are 15 Senate security guards costing more than $900,000.
$12.5 million, and there are 150 people. If you were to project that onto the city of Pittsburgh, you would need 60,000 police officers. It's about 1 police officer for every 7 or 8 people in the Capitol in a normal day.
We crunched the numbers and discovered there's actually more security officers in the state Capitol complex than there are police in Butler, Greensburg, and Indiana. They have 71 officers combined. And in Ohio, only one agency, the State Highway Patrol, guards the Capitol complex. Even the U.S. Capitol has just 1 agency. Is it a duplication of services?
Well, I can't necessarily say that because when you look at the manpower right now, could Capitol Police do the job? Yes. With the current resources, no.
We wanted to talk to the people in charge of both the House and Senate security forces, so we came here to the state Capitol. They refused to go on camera, but they did tell me those forces serve an important function. They say the security guards maintain order in the chambers and patrol the House and Senate, making sure offices are secure. State Representative Darrell Metcalf contends the security forces actually save taxpayers money because their salaries aren't as high as Capitol Police.
If we would use Capitol Police for both entities, both chambers, our costs would go up. So I think just using a security force is all we need.
But critics contend there's really no need for the security forces, that a few additional Capitol Police officers could do their job. And some say there's another reason lawmakers want their own separate security forces.
A lot of what's going on has nothing to do with their own personal security, but to shield them from public criticism.
Now, Capitol Police used to guard the state office building right here in Pittsburgh, but when that was closed down, those officers were transferred to Harrisburg, where they are now patrolling the state capitol with all of the other security forces.
Historic, yes, but sinking financially. Now, one of the last cable-driven ferries in the country is about to get a $1 million makeover with your tax dollars. The Fredericktown Ferry is a costly operation that really continues to lose money.
And tonight, Target 11 investigator Rick Earl is asking, is this why we're broke?
Yeah, Peggy, David, your tax dollars are keeping the ferry afloat. Critics say it's now time to close it for good and use that money for other more pressing projects. But others say it's a part of history that also provides an important service. The ferry has carried cars and people across the Mon River from Fredericktown to LaBelle for decades. But rising costs have taken a toll.
When they say you're operating in the black, we're not. We're dark maroon.
Fayette and Washington County split the cost. Only 90 cars a day use the ferry, and the $2 fare doesn't come close to covering operating costs. In fact, after fares are deducted, the counties are still on the hook for $58,000 of your tax dollars in 2010, $89,000 in 2011, and nearly $200,000 last year. Triple the cost in 2 years.
Again, you have factors that come into play. Of course, repair, employment costs have gone up.
And the ferry is now in desperate need of a major overhaul. Target 11 has learned $1 million federal grant. More of your tax dollars will pay for the upgrade.
If you're operating at a loss and you subsidize that loss, you get more of a loss. And that's what we have going on with the ferry.
90 people a day some might say it's a waste of their tax dollars.
And they have a very good point.
And now that there's another option, a brand new $110 million taxpayer-funded bridge just 4 miles down the river, critics say the ferry has run its course. But riders we spoke with, most work at either the State Correctional Institution in Fayette or Greene County, say the new bridge is just too far.
That's only like 9 miles difference, you know, so no, the ferry says it's like a half hour, 45 minutes.
It's an extreme convenience, and this is historic. It's so historic.
Tax money well spent?
I think so. I think so, and a lot of people that use it would think so.
The Fredericktown ferry boat has been an historical part of that region, but you know, I'm a firm believer the history is made each day, and again, we have to look at what is in the best interest of the taxpayers.
Now, I asked the commissioner about the possibility of raising the fare. He said they did that a few years ago, and another increase at this point would chase more riders away. Meanwhile, a spokesman for Washington County tells Target 11 the ferry is important, and he says they will work to keep it up and running.
The rates go up and up, but a Target 11 investigation uncovered thousands of people riding the Pennsylvania Turnpike for free. It got us asking, is this why we're broke?
Target 11 investigator Rick Earl traveled to the Turnpike's headquarters to see who doesn't have to pay. Rick?
Yeah, David, Peggy, it seems every time you go through the toll booth, you have to dig a little deeper into your wallet. But we discovered nearly 8,000 people have free passes to ride the Turnpike. So we wanted to know who they are and why they don't have to pay. From Pittsburgh to Philadelphia on the Turnpike will cost you $29.65. But more than 2,000 Turnpike employees get to ride free, even when they're not on duty.
No, that's not right at all. We have to pay, so why shouldn't they?
I guess I don't see that much different than any perk that might be given to an employee.
I worked for the post office 41 years, and we didn't get nothing special.
It's a perk that has cost taxpayers millions since it first went into effect back in the 1940s.
To utilize it for leisure, and that the Turnpike says that they're not tracking that use at all, is unbelievable.
Leaders at the Turnpike contend it's an insignificant portion of the total free travel. But former Auditor General Jack Wagner estimates during the past 5 years, the Turnpike has lost nearly $8 million.
We think it's out of control.
And it's not just employees traveling for free. In addition to the employees, nearly 4,000 consultants and contractors also get those free passes, along with 30 state officials. We wanted to know exactly who's on that list, so we came here to the headquarters in Highspire, but no one would talk to us. After submitting a right-to-know request, we received a partial list of those with free passes. Using that information, along with data from the Auditor General's report, we were able to determine who gets to ride for free. 3 PennDOT deputy secretaries each get passes. The lieutenant governor has one, and the governor's office has 21. A spokesperson there tells Target 11 they are strictly for business.
If it's unofficial business, I don't think people will be concerned. But if it's on your own time and you're making trips on vacation.
And free passes also go to 48 different construction companies, including the Turnpike's engineering firm, Michael Baker. They get 19. State police, towing companies, ambulances, Service Plaza employees, and the company that manages Easy Pass also have free passes. And most are supposed to be used for business only. But the former Auditor General says there's little tracking.
The Turnpike Commission does not have good oversight of these free passes.
And in this letter sent to the Auditor General and obtained by Target 11, the Turnpike acknowledged the need to, quote, implement an added level of accountability.
It really points to some of the bad business practices that I believe have been perpetrated in some of the departments, including by the Turnpike Commission.
Now, the former Auditor General says the current system is ripe for abuse. Now, at this point, it does not appear the Turnpike has any plans to eliminate that toll-free travel for employees. They say it's worth it because the employees actually serve as an extra set of eyes to report any problems on the Turnpike. Now, if you want to see the list of those who have those free passes right here, go to WPXI.com and click on the link in my story.
Bagpipe lessons, etiquette classes, dancing lessons.
Your tax dollars footing the bill for some of these programs at the Pittsburgh Public Schools. So at a time when the district is closing schools, reducing staff, Target 11 investigator Rick Earl uncovered thousands of dollars in unusual spending. Rick.
Yeah, David, Peggy, I've been pouring through 5 years of city school contracts right here. We focused on your tax dollars used to hire consultants. Now, these are in addition to the teachers and staff members you're already paying for. And some of these contracts caught our attention. At Carrick High School, $25,000 of your tax dollars for bagpipe lessons, $3,500 to teach etiquette at Peabody, $8,700 to show students how to care for animals. And your tax dollars also paid for dancing, boxing, and karate lessons.
As a City of Pittsburgh school district taxpayer, do you want to see the school district laying out money for those types of expenditures?
While some are paid out of the district's general fund, others come from state or federal grants. Either way, it's your tax dollars. And with many schools tightening budgets and some districts now charging students to play sports, critics say taxpayers shouldn't be paying the bill.
If you have a child that's interested in those, usually you go and seek out a program outside of school and you pay the money to do it.
And in my opinion, those were small potatoes.
City School Board member Mark Brentley defended the contracts, some of which are allocated for specific after-school programs.
A lot of these things are needed because of the issue of obesity in the city, not to mention, but it keeps our kids active and it keeps them involved.
Brentley also defended a $148,000 contract to a Pittsburgh company to produce promotional videos and provide other services. But he took issue with a $150,000 contract to a Massachusetts company to produce magazines.
There are at least 3, maybe 4 companies that I'm aware of who can easily produce that with a local flavor.
And $91,000 tax dollars paid to a consultant to help the district's chief of staff write grant proposals.
And that was a shock to a lot of us. We have wonderful individuals here on staff who have kept this district running for years with their expertise and their ability to write.
Target 11 also discovered millions of public and private funds that have gone to consultants to improve student and teacher performance. You've seen the worthwhileness of these consultants?
I think some of our consultants have been phenomenal. Am I going to say every single one of them? No.
Yet even with all the money doled out to consultants, the district last year failed to reach academic progress benchmarks for the first time in 6 years.
AYPs, the PSSA scores, graduation rates. One has to wonder, again, what is the district's thinking on these things?
Now, this story has really sparked heated reaction on our Facebook page. We got more than 100 comments on it. Now, Tammy wrote, while I agree that these arts are important to offer children, I disagree that our taxes should be paying for them. This is something parents should be paying for. And Bill wrote, my son participated in the ballroom dancing, as did most of the 5th grade. And it was awesome. It was a great program that taught the kids discipline and respect. Now, a district spokesperson tells me funding for the video programs has been eliminated, and the magazines have now been cut from 2 down to 1 a year. Now, we sent a list of questions about the other contracts we highlighted in this story, but we didn't hear back from the district.
A Target 11 investigation uncovers lawmakers criminally charged yet still collecting their taxpayer-funded pension.
You've heard the saying that crime doesn't pay. Well, in this case, it just might. Investigator Rick Earl has been crunching those numbers. He's asking, is this why we're broke? Rick.
Well, David, yeah, we looked at the pension data for a number of state lawmakers, and we discovered that some of them were able to cash in on the taxpayer dime for months and even years, all while waiting for their day in court. Former state lawmaker Mike Vian of Beaver County collected more than $176,000 of his tax-funded pension until he was convicted of public corruption and forced to surrender the payments.
What's happening right now is that people are getting rewarded for breaking the law. They are delaying their day of reckoning as long as possible.
State employees charged with a crime are allowed to retire and collect their pensions until they are convicted of or plead guilty to certain crimes. We examined the pension records of 6 former state lawmakers who ran into trouble with the law and discovered they collected a combined total of nearly $900,000 before the payments were stopped. Former State Representative Stephen Stetler topped the list with $219,000.
They've collected tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars on the taxpayer's dime, and you can't get it back.
But the state auditor general wants to change the entire system. He says lawmakers charged with a crime should not be allowed to touch their pensions until their cases are wrapped up.
Finding a way to put that, in a sense, into a lockbox while the case is going on.
Auditor General Eugene DePasquale says lawmakers should have access to money they contributed to the retirement plan, but he says the taxpayer-funded portion should be withheld until there's a final court ruling.
Then if it turns out that they're found, not guilty, innocent, whatever the situation would be, then they can get that money back. But if they are found guilty, then since the taxpayers weren't funding them during the trial.
And Target 11 discovered taxpayers continue to fund former State Senator Ray Musto of Luzerne County. Musto, who maintains his innocence, was charged with taking bribes in 2010, but still hasn't gone to trial. He's collecting $10,000 a month. So far, more than $275,000.
We're innocent until proven guilty, and indictments do not necessarily mean you're guilty. It means
political consultant Bill Green says lawmakers have earned this money and are entitled to it until the courts say otherwise.
People can be upset about it, but the fact is you're still eligible for it by law.
Now, we also checked on the pension status of two high-profile lawmakers from our area. Both Bill DeWeese and Jane Ori did not retire and collect those monthly pension payments. They may, however, be eligible for their contributions minus any restitution once they're released from prison.
Target 11 investigation into a controversial air program some call plain nonsense. Back in November, we told you about the Essential Air Service program. Tens of millions of dollars spent to subsidize flights into tiny airports. Investigator Rick Earl stayed on the case to find out if there's been any change to this program. Rick?
Yeah, David, critics call it a waste of your tax dollars. Supporters say it stimulates the local economy. Now, despite federal budget cuts and furloughs at some of the nation's largest airports, this is a program that remains untouched. We tested it again, and just like we saw back in November in Franklin, we found near-empty airplanes flying to places like Stanton, Virginia and Beckley, West Virginia. And despite huge federal budget cuts in recent months, which for days required the furlough of air traffic controllers and the closure of air traffic control towers, the government's controversial Essential Air Service is still set to suck up tens of millions of tax dollars to subsidize passenger tickets at 118 tiny airports nationwide.
Can we really afford as a nation to keep subsidizing people to fly on airplanes that are mostly empty when there are better ways to get them there?
A U.S. Department of Transportation spokesman says despite a budget crisis, no adjustments have yet to be made to the Essential Air Service. In fact, when we walked into Beckley's airport days after the federal budget cuts took effect, we found the same number of flights scheduled, a ticket clerk, and a TSA checkpoint still functioning, but an airport with no passengers.
They have economies that can benefit directly from having that air service that's available.
Senator Bob Casey tells us these airports depend on the program to keep their economies soaring, despite the call from critics who want it canceled.
I've heard that argument made over the years, but I know the economic benefit to our state.
Now, each of those 118 smaller airports has a representative in Congress, and at this point, they don't appear willing to touch that Essential Air Service program, even in this time of belt tightening.
Target 11 investigating convicts collecting unemployment benefits. That's right, they're locked up behind bars and you're already paying for their food and lodging. Well, now prisoners are trying to collect even more of your tax dollars by illegally claiming unemployment benefits. Target 11 investigator Rick Earl found about a new effort to crack down on this fraud. He's live now at the Allegheny County Jail with more. Rick?
Yeah, David, this is very troubling. No one could tell us how long this has been going on, but we discovered inmates at county jails across the state have been collecting millions of dollars in these benefits until the state finally caught on. Locked up behind bars, but still receiving unemployment benefits?
The father of the individual was actually cashing the paychecks.
Matt Rufner is the deputy warden at the Armstrong County Jail. Last year, they discovered one of their inmates had received $11,000 in unemployment benefits, all while sitting in a jail cell.
They're in jail for a reason, the majority of them, and anything to make an extra buck. And they knew all along that they couldn't get caught doing this.
Here's how inmates work the system. While behind bars, they would have a relative call, or in some cases, use a jailhouse computer to check in with the unemployment office. The unemployment checks then would be directly deposited into their accounts, no questions asked. After discovering the fraud, the state made major changes and tapped into a new computer system, the Pennsylvania Justice Network. It cross-checks names of inmates with unemployment benefits. In just the first year, they've stopped more than $50 million from going to inmates. $5 million of that is right here in western Pennsylvania.
Totally unbelievable.
State Representative Dom Costa of Morningside was unaware of this until we brought it to his attention. He wants to know why it went undetected for so long. And he's concerned now because 10 counties still aren't on board the JNet system. So there could potentially be inmates there who are collecting unemployment.
Exactly. They can be sitting there, as we're talking right now, collecting taxpayers' money and sitting in a correctional institution.
Now, right here at the Allegheny County Jail since November, that JNet system stopped 400 inmates from getting those illegal benefits. Representative Costa tells me he's now considering introducing legislation that would require every county in the state to sign up for this JNet system so they can stop these illegal benefits.
A viewer email to Target 11 tipped us off to this next story. This receipt has a food stamp balance of $12,000, and we wanted to know how this could happen. Target 11 investigator Rick Earl uncovered answers and a push for change. He's live now with what one receipt reveals. Rick, good evening.
Yeah, Peggy, good evening. At first, we thought it might be a typo or an accounting mistake on this receipt, but then we discovered it's the real thing. This person actually has a food stamp balance of more than $12,000, and tonight there are many more questions than answers. A typical receipt from a grocery store, but take a closer look at the bottom. It reveals a food stamp account balance of $12,042.50.
I wish I had that money on there.
We showed the receipt to people on food stamps. Even they couldn't believe it.
I mean, I can really use it. I mean, like I said, $28 compared to that, I'd be eating like a millionaire.
It's really confusing. It really is. More than upsetting, because I don't quite understand how they did it.
Is that a concern to you when you have a balance like that?
Yeah, yes, it is. And I don't understand why that is.
We took the receipt to the head of the Department of Public Welfare, who asked us for a copy.
And this is something that we could get. We should show the feds.
Under federal law, DPW says they can't shut down an account unless it's been inactive for 12 months. And they say while high balances are unusual, they are not illegal. They've seen cases where a person is suffering from a mental illness and doesn't use the benefits or grows their own food and stockpiles the benefits.
For government to allow that type of a balance to occur, I mean, there ought to be audits of every one of these accounts.
State Representative Darrell Metcalf argues that a person with that balance really doesn't need the assistance. Nearly 2 million people are on food stamps in Pennsylvania at a cost of $231 million to taxpayers every month.
For the taxpayers out there that are working hard every day to make a living and make ends meet, for them to see a receipt like this would create outrage.
Now, DPW refused to release specific information about that $12,000 food stamp account, so we don't know why it was so high. Now, there is legislation pending in Congress to deal with all of this. It would allow states to shut down a food stamp account after 3 months of inactivity instead of that 12-month current waiting period right now. Of course, if DPW has anything more to say about this, we will let you know.
An indoor sports facility, a sound stage, and a natural gas drilling company. All of them have one thing in common. They're all private companies that have been awarded public tax dollars. And it got us asking the important question, is this why we're broke? Target 11 investigator Rick Earl dug deeper into this controversial tax-funded program that's poured millions into private projects. Rick?
Well, Peggy, the program so far has paid out $3.5 billion of your tax dollars. Now, a lot of that money has gone to some very important projects, but we discovered that some of it has also gone to some private companies. Some say it's a waste of your tax dollars. Others say it's worth it.
They bring their dogs down here, let them run.
Ken Schultz fought the construction of an indoor baseball facility next to his home in Butler Township and won. But what he found almost as troubling as the location, the owners of the proposed facility received a $500,000 tax dollar grant to help pay for it.
Why is our tax dollars going to something like this? It's unbelievable, especially in today's economy.
Attorney Tom King represents the owners of the proposed Matt Clement Baseball Academy and Sports Training Facility.
This facility will produce jobs. It will produce tax revenue for the school, the county, and the township.
Target 11 discovered that this isn't the only private project funded by the same state initiative known as the Redevelopment Capital Assistance Program, or RCAP.
Corporate welfare through RCAP and these other programs is a perfect example of how government has been perverted to create a system that only benefits those with connections.
Target 11 obtained the list of RCAP projects, and while there's plenty of money for nonprofits like hospitals, zoos, and universities, there's also millions of dollars for private projects, including $200,000 to a soundstage company in McKees Rocks, $500,000 for expansion to a medical research firm in Pittsburgh, $2 million to a drilling company to aid with construction costs, moving its headquarters from Morgantown to Waynesburg, and $6 million to a contractor to turn the old Goodwill building on Carson Street into apartments and shops. Is this money critical to these projects?
Absolutely critical. These projects would not happen but for this money.
Allegheny County Economic Development Director Dennis Davin says a lot of these projects help energize the economy and are directly linked to 17,000 jobs in our area. For example, he said the $20 million that went to develop sites near the airport now includes the headquarters of Dick's Sporting Goods.
If we develop it, it gives us an advantage over a number of other areas in the United States to attract businesses and have businesses that are in the Pittsburgh region give them the ability to grow here and not somewhere else.
I think you have to ask yourselves, if these are such valuable projects, if they're going to create numerous jobs, if they're going to really stimulate in an area, then why can't they get funding in the private sector? Why can't they raise the funds themselves?
Now, a spokesman for the soundstage tells me they were awarded that grant, but so far haven't received any RCAP money. As far as that sports training facility, they tell me they are now looking at other sites, but they may ultimately return and try to do it at that original site.
4 Pittsburgh Police Department employees put on paid leave in the wake of an FBI investigation into police finances. Target 11 investigator Rick Earl wanted to know how much longer taxpayers will have to foot the bill. Rick?
Yeah, Peggy, that's the $75,000 question to be exact. That's how much money these 4 employees have made while sitting at home. And no one could tell us how long this will go on and why they aren't back to work. Finance manager Sandy Ganster has been on paid leave since March when her name surfaced during a federal probe into police finances. So far, Ganster has collected more than $25,000 tax dollars, and her attorney says she's never been given a reason.
She wants to go back to work. She's ready, willing, and able. She was a great employee. She did the right thing. As we can see, a lot of things are being cleaned up, and a lot of things have been revealed because of her efforts.
And Ganster isn't alone. The acting chief placed 3 other employees on paid leave in February. A spokesman says they too haven't been given a reason. And so far, Officer Tanya Ford has collected $24,000. Payroll clerks Tamara Davis, $15,000, and Kim Montgomery, $11,000. Councilwoman Teresa Smith believes it's gone on too long, and all 4 employees should be doing something.
We need to see that the taxpayers are getting some services for the funding that they're putting out.
So we went directly to Public Safety Director Mike Huss. Concerned about taxpayers paying these people for doing that?
It's always a concern. You know, it's always a concern, but we feel it's the best decision at this time.
Huss says the 4 employees will remain on paid leave until an internal investigation is completed. But Target 11 found several other police employees under internal investigation, including Commander Eric Holmes. Can you talk to us about any of them? Who's been questioned about holding down a second full-time job as a university public safety director, who still remain on the job. And Attorney Diffenderfer believes Sandy Ganster isn't getting a fair shake.
The city knows exactly what Sandy knew and what she said, and there's absolutely nothing wrong. There's absolutely no criminal conduct at all.
Now, we asked the acting chief for a response, but we never heard back from her. We also asked Public Safety Director Huss how long that internal investigation would take. He said he didn't know. Yeah, David, of course, the population here in Pittsburgh much smaller than Philadelphia, yet we had nearly 3 times as many welfare fraud cases, 151 of them right here in Allegheny County alone last year. Can we ask you a question about those welfare fraud charges? Let me ask you a quick question. Hey, Andrew Lee isn't talking about the welfare charges he's now facing. Investigators allege Lee lied on his welfare application, failed to tell them, among other things, he owned a cigar shop on the north side, 5 rental properties, and 3 cars, according to the criminal complaint. Well, I just want your side of the story. Investigators say Lee received almost $8,000 in food stamps and medical assistance. Target 11 obtained the number of welfare fraud cases for the entire state. It jumped from 976 last year to 1,106 this year, and the dollar amount went from $3.6 million to $4 million. Allegheny County led the state in both categories.
If there are people that are defrauding the system, do we want to catch them? Absolutely. Do we want to find abuse? Absolutely.
The Department of Public Welfare Secretary says cracking down on fraud is critical to helping those in need.
There will never be enough money to meet the needs, and especially there won't be if there is waste, fraud, and abuse.
DPW also detected 12,000 welfare cards used out of state, and they're investigating 2,000 people with multiple replacement cards and 1,000 stores with questionable food stamp transactions.
It shows a broken system.
State Representative Darrell Metcalf has introduced legislation targeting welfare fraud and abuse. He supports DPW's recent efforts to crack down, but he says much more needs to be done.
I don't think the majority of people don't mind seeing people in real need find some assistance. But there's so many abuses in the system, so I'm hoping that we could tackle these types of issues and get some help out of the governor's office to do so.
Now, Andrew Lee faces a court hearing on those welfare fraud charges in January. He is currently on probation for filing a false protection from abuse order against a Pittsburgh police commander. Now, we have posted a breakdown of all of those welfare fraud cases county by county on our website, WPXI.com. For now, reporting live downtown, Rick Earl, Channel 11 News.
Okay, Rick, thank you very much. If you have a story for Rick, we'll send them the idea, target11 at WPXI.com, or also on